Welcome to the BWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. 27-11 was on nobody's bingo card. Penn State wins. It was 27-3 until the final 20 seconds. They did give up a touchdown with mostly backups in the game. But that was not, even if they win 27-3, not what a lot of people were expecting in this particular game. A lot of things played out the way we expected. UCLA is not as bad as their record would indicate. They're not as bad as some of their score differentials would indicate, but they have made those mistakes, so they are what your record says you are. But they played a clean game today, and I think that's where I would start with what happened. UCLA, I said this on the tailgate show, and I'll go back and I'll watch the film and I'll see where they made all their mistakes that I didn't see live and right away, but I didn't see any overt mistakes, any overt whoopsies that Penn State was able to take advantage of. And that's what we said. You can't predict when a player is going to bust coverage. That is not something that you can game plan for. You can't say, hey, call the offensive play where they make a mistake. So they didn't make any big ones. Penn State, I think it's interesting. This is a team that we saw be very explosive to start. And maybe they're a little more conservative, or maybe they just haven't hit 100% of their deep shots every time they take them. But we haven't seen as much of that explosiveness. They turn it on, though, right? Like right before halftime, Penn State, quick strike down the field. Drew Allar looked great. And then that's kind of where the game changed, in my opinion, with the second half adjustments. Some of the things UCLA was doing in the second half, I think, were very different than what they were doing in the first half and caused Penn State to do some certain things. We'll get into all of that in the show as we discuss what happened and take your questions, by the way. I am T. Frank. I am the film analyst for Blue White Illustrated. If you're new here, maybe some of you are watching from the West Coast. Maybe you're UCLA fans that are hate watching. I don't know. But there's a lot of new people that join us for the postgame show. So I just want to explain, we're going to be breaking down a lot of the X's and the O's as I saw them during the game. I'm not going to get 100% of it right. I'm trying to do the best I can instantly. So when the coach says, I got to go back and watch the film, I'm trying to give you the watch the film part of it live after the game. But I want to get the temperature of you, the fan, as well, because that's also important. I just have blinders to that. I don't necessarily know how you're feeling. Obviously, if you are here, you're deeply invested. You are part of the core of the Penn State fandom. So we want to hear from you. There's two ways you can join into the chat. You can do it just giving your thoughts in there, or you can donate to the channel with a super chat. Those two things are not one-to-one. I'm not only going to answer super chat questions, but they show up in these bright, fancy things that I can then see. As I'm up here tap dancing on a high wire by myself, I do need a little bit of help, and that is super helpful. So that's how the show works if you're new. Welcome to everybody who already knows those things. So let's dive in and see what you're thinking. I wanted to give a shout out to Central PA. The whole region donated $20 to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel during the tailgate show. There wasn't a great time for me to talk about it. And also, I was pretty embarrassed. They did it during the part of the show that didn't have any audio. But we're here. We move on. Short memory. David Greeter says, what an abysmally vanilla game. The D looked bored. They didn't look like they wanted to dominate, and they didn't. The D-line should have dominated and didn't. David, I don't agree. I think they did a good job in the game. They had -9 yards in the third quarter. James Franklin talked about, I think it was either post-game last week or it was Monday this week. We've got to break some tendencies on the first drive, because when you're game planned, and this is the thing with UCLA, Eric Bieniemy is a very good coach. He is a very smart offensive coach. The fact that they're scoring 3 points and 11 points, like, he knows what he's doing. When you look at the scripted drives from UCLA, they look like a legit team. It's just once they get off of that and they're off in the wilderness, they don't have the players to keep up. And so they come out with really good scripted drives. And yes, this is the point to me. If we look at the slow start to this game, I frequently now look at these drive charts. Penn State starts out with a 3-and-out. That one's obvious. But UCLA's first drive is 11 plays, and it takes 6 minutes and 21 seconds. Penn State follows that up in the second quarter with an 8-minute drive that is 16 plays long. without the clock stopping on every first down now, this is the reality. You're only going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They only got 9 drives in this game. If you are not going to be explosive and score in 4 plays, you will get less drives in a game, especially if you're running 82 yards on 16 plays. So part of this, I didn't see any massive issues with the defensive line, David. I will go back and look just to make sure that I'm not wrong, but I have a pretty firm feeling, especially at the beginning of the game, that was definitely not the case. There were some issues with run defense. There were some of those explosive runs where certain players weren't in their gaps, and you got some of those explosive runs, which we have not seen from this team overall. But again, David is reacting to something I think is really important to point out here. They allowed 93 total yards rushing. They didn't allow 100 yards once again. And again, going back to that first, second half comparisons, another thing that I'm really interested to see how these adjustments at halftime work. Penn State, in the third quarter alone, put up 10 points and allowed -9 yards on defense. They allowed -3 yards rushing, essentially. Sorry, no. -14. The average was -2.8. So I can't say that the D looked bored because I think that they did their job. It's just that it didn't result in the outcome that you would want. And let me go back and look at some of my notes on the play-by-play in the beginning to see what exactly happened. To me, it was the short passing game. Now that I'm looking at it, they had some good concepts, and this is what I'm talking about with Eric Bieniemy. Man coverage beaters, zone attacking. I was putting this in the Blue White Illustrated message board thread, which, by the way, you should subscribe so you can get that in-game analysis I try to do for you. It is not lined up with your television. So you're going to be getting me like Internet Explorer meme from 15 minutes ago, breaking down something on the first drive that happened. We're getting into the end of the first quarter, but I bring you the analysis of what happened so you can match it up with your feelings. And they had some plans to attack Penn State's known concepts. Penn State loves to drop and zone pressure. So they'll drop Amin Vanover into coverage. Amin Vanover is 268 pounds. And I know that, TJ Watt exists, and there are freakazoids like Micah Parsons out there who can do both, but not everybody can, especially when you're a defensive end and you're token in coverage, like you're in coverage. Your body is doing more of the coverage of just being out there as opposed to being a legitimate coverage player. So Eric Bieniemy attacks that idea. He throws at the defensive end. There were 2 times that they threw a check down to a running back, and they did a really good quasi screen where normally a rub route goes the opposite way of the route that it's trying to free up. They used a third down like out route and then a swing pass from the running back to essentially in man coverage get a lead blocker, but also have it be a route. And so there were just little things like that extended those drives, and that led to a 4th down stop. So we got Michael McCollum here. He says, when is the next Nate was right segment? Yeah, Nick Singleton did not play today. We were monitoring that throughout the week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We had some information. We went into Wednesday looking for some things, and then suddenly Nick Singleton was not there, so we did some reporting. And I don't want to get in trouble here. We live in a post-fact society where if you don't agree with something, there is enough misinformation out there that you can label anything you don't like as misinformation. But the thing is, not everybody is just lying to you. And that's what we do at Blue White Illustrated, why you should subscribe, because we tell you the things, and nobody's perfect. We will get some things wrong, but we do journalism. I don't do journalism. Nate does journalism. He's the one that does all of those things and gets you the information. So, there are people you should listen to and trust. And Blue White Illustrated, because we were reporting on this on Wednesday, we even followed up on that. And I'm going to give you some of the tea on the message board of, hey, bumps and bruises. We don't know how we're monitoring this. He could play. He could not play. That's how all that works out. And the decision was he didn't play this week. So, yeah, Nate was right. Let me go get that information. He's not even here. I don't know why I'm doing this, but it's just, we'll do it. it's a long week when you feel like you're taking crazy pills. So yeah, for all of you that don't subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and you're here for the first time, we have a weekly show. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Nate Bowers on the Tuesday show. And Nate was right as a frequent segment because it makes me laugh. Robert Warfel says, why does Andy Cole and Nikki bring in the bow package when Drew gets into a rhythm? I don't necessarily. The only way I would say that is if you were going to call a pass with Bo. And if you're just calling option plays, what they're doing is they want to attack a certain part of the defensive structure with an athletic quarterback. They want to run the option to keep it alive in the offense. And so Drew doesn't do that well. They want to put that on somebody who does, and that's where you get Bo Pruila doing his thing. So we had this conversation on the Tuesday show, and I don't love certain ways that they're running certain plays. I think that's my biggest problem. I'll give you an example. There are a couple of times they run an option play with Bo Pruila, and he's got a lead pitch player that's a receiver. Today it was Liam Clifford. And they run it here and there. It's not 100% of the time, but they'll come back to it. And they came back to it in a situation on that third down, their final third down that set up their final field goal. They ran it into the boundary, meaning the short side of the field. It's just not a lot of room unless somebody is brain dead and, kind of like misses their assignment completely. And by that, I mean runs to the wrong side of the field. It's just hard to run that play in that direction. So I would say when it comes to the Andy Kotelnicki Bo package, the problem is that it is a run tell. Just kind of like that quick run up to the line. I saw at Kansas where they would throw some play action out of that. They would go and do those jumbo sets and throw to tight ends. I believe that might be coming at some point. But right now it's been 100% run. So you just are selling out to stop the run if you're the front 11 of an 11-man defense. So there are certain tendencies I feel like they need to break. And that's one of those things when it comes to the Bo Pruila package and some of the things that they were looking for in this particular offense to work that just kind of resulted in 2-yard plays. Steven says, we win, same old slow start. Offensively, I think that's a problem. They came in and they went 3 and out. Now I'll say on that third down play, they ran the same play that went to Trey Wallace that did not go for a first down last week. So that's 0 for 2 now. This week, I want to give credit to the UCLA defensive back. They're in cover 2 in that situation. So I think it was Amari Evans underneath this time. He's running what's called a whip route or a return route or a jerk route where you fake a slant and then you go back outside. You're expecting man coverage on 3rd and short. They keep expecting man coverage on 3rd and short, but they keep running a particular style of offensive play called mesh on 3rd and short. And the best way to prevent a first down against that particular play is to run zone. And so teams keep running zone and they keep getting a 4th down. So like some of these things are a little bit predictable. Some of these things are a little bit, they're setting themselves up in these situations. But the point of giving credit to the UCLA defensive back is he gave up depth on that play to cover Liam Clifford behind him and baited Drew Allar into that throw. And I say baited because as soon as Allar wound up to throw, he immediately attacked downhill. So if Allar was a pump fake or something like that, by the time he does that, he's out of his rhythm and the safety probably comes over top. And either way, it's incomplete. The defense did a good job there. So the slow start on offense, the 3 and out, I feel like they had, I don't want to say it's a good play because I feel like they've run that for the last 3 weeks in a row on 3rd and short, meaning 4 or less. And even the one where Drew Allar ran the football for the first time, same play, same exact play. And I don't know if they're setting something up for later in the season. This was something James Franklin talked about of getting first down, staying on the field, because they did go for a shot play later in the game on 3rd and long. Trey Wallace was open for a touchdown from what I saw quickly. I need to go back and see if that's actually true, but he was open on a big post against this quarters defense, this zone defense they were running. And Allar just couldn't get him the ball because of the pressure from Anthony Donko at the right tackle, who came out of the game and did not return after that play. That's concerning. That's very, very concerning. Hopefully he's not severely hurt because he's been their best offensive lineman overall, I think. He and Venga Ioane are in a close duel there. Talked a lot about the offense, talked a little bit about the defense, but we need to give some players some huge props in this game. I was super impressed by our defensive players of the game, and I want to give it to both of them because they did the same thing in this game. The Penn State Defensive Player of the Game brought to you by McClanahan Law Firm and Matt McClanahan, defense attorney in State College. He's a Penn State super fan. He was texting me before the show saying he's never heard Beaver Stadium be so loud for made field goals in the middle of a game that you were expected to blow the other team out. Is that a minor, total tangent here, is that a minor benefit of this game? Of they got to get the win, secure the victory, have a comfortable margin, and work on the kicking game? I didn't have that as a high priority, but if it's an added bonus here, I think that's good. Anyway, defensive players of the game, co-defensive players of the game, Zakee Wheatley and Tony Rojas. The first month of the season, Tony Rojas struggled to tackle. I was thinking he had some sort of injury. He was banged up and trying to play through something. I still think he might be working through that, but he found a way to work through it this week. 8 tackles, 5 of them solo, and 1 tackle for a loss in this game to lead the Nittany Lions. Now, Alonzo Ford ended up soaking up 7, I think, in the final fourth quarter to be the second place tackler on the team. But Zakee Wheatley, 7 tackles, 3 solo, 1 tackle for a loss last week. And really to start the season, Zakee Wheatley, pursuit, angles in space, tackling in space were an issue for him. He was on a mission today. Holy cow, I have not seen a turnaround like that, a total 180 in the way you were playing from one week to another from a player in quite some time. And this is the thing, we talked about it pregame. He did not play the boundary safety, but that's the kind of play that's going to get him the opportunity and give Penn State the opportunity to then put Jalen Reed back down at that line position, or hell, maybe they put Wheatley. If he's playing like that, he's a great center fielder, and I'm kind of going off a little bit of the deep end after seeing him play really well. But I was so impressed with Zakee Wheatley. I thought that was an excellent job that he sniffed out and stopped so many of those plays. I think it was either the third or the fourth down play where he stonewalled the running back in like the B gap, which is not just being, filling against a receiver on a screen. That's some big boy football playing down in the trenches. So most improved player, co-defensive player of the game, Zakee Wheatley, Tony Rojas, excellent in coverage once again. And of course, a much better run defender. Busted some gaps. So there is still some things to work on there. I think he was not maybe as sound in run defense, but then there were a couple of really good runs where he's playing. They have this technique, and I'm going to do some more pantomiming on screen, which is going to be hilarious. It's going to be unprofessional as heck, but okay. So this is the way you would, the camera is the gap I'm supposed to cover, right? And you're square, your shoulders are square. You are trying to take up as much room as possible and not give up your physical space on the field. But they have a technique, and it might be for RPOs, or it might be just because they have a zone blitz, or I don't actually know the technique reason why, but they turn and drop while keeping their eyes kind of like this towards the line of scrimmage. And when you're doing this, you're doing 2 things at once. And one of them is not coming downhill against the run. So there were a couple of times that happened to Tony where he did not get his run fit because he was using that particular technique. Something I should ask why they do that. At some point, in the near future of the Penn State defense. But those are your co-defensive players. I thought in the first half especially, they were very, very good. Getting back to some of your questions, we'll do some analysis. We'll talk about the football, then we'll get to more. David Greeter is back again. He is not. David, I don't think I'm characterizing this the wrong way, but he does not seem happy. He says Andy Kotelnicki needs to cut the crap on, just attack the defense the way they show you to. Stop running nonsense and the put it on film. Drew needs to be able to get into the rhythm with his wide receivers. Frustrating. I think we're talking about the Bo Pruila package again. Let's talk. I'm going to spin this to another conversation because Andy Kotelnicki, the running game, running the ball 30 times, only having 24 passing attempts, not having as many plays in this game. And really, you look at the final yardage differential, 322 to 260. I do think there are some valid reasons to be frustrated. But then again, a lot of the extra yardage that comes in a game comes at the end of the game, and a 16-play drive that takes nearly 8 minutes, half of the quarter, when Penn State is putting their defensive second unit on the field, you don't get your backups to get the extra 70 yards to put you over 400. So there's some game script things and some decisions there that they wanted to get their young guys to for this disparity, for the offense to look like they had a better game. When a team gives you two high safeties, and that's what they were doing largely in the third quarter, UCLA, it is an almost automatic give the ball to the running back situation. That is in college, in high school, or in the NFL. You see two deep safeties, it's an alert to run because you have numbers advantage in the box. And there were some things that UCLA was doing, rotating their safeties and guessing right at times to get a guy at the point of attack. It was not a particularly robust running attack. 85 yards, 2.8 yards per carry. They were much more effective and explosive through the passing game. I mean, I don't know. Let me see if I can do this right off the bat. Yeah, they averaged 14 yards per passing play. So they got it done through the air, but they just didn't have the opportunities in the second half because UCLA took those away, except for the big plays like the long 57-yard pass to Liam Clifford. So when they gave Penn State those opportunities, Drew Allar eviscerated them. I firmly believe the drive before halftime where he marched them straight down the field to get that touchdown, that changed UCLA's game plan. They decided at that point, we're done. You're not going to get those explosive plays. Nick Singleton's not in the game. Katron Allen can run through somebody's face 4 times, but if it gets to 6 yards, that's better than 17 or 25 or whatever Nick Singleton might get in that situation if he's able to get, break a run for a big play. A lot of the explosiveness was out of the game in that particular situation. And also, I want to make this very clear, Anthony Donko not being in the game is a big deal. He is their best consistency-wise run blocker who dominates, is just a mauler at right tackle when he has a matchup advantage. Nolan Rucci's high end reaches close to that, but his consistency, his size, his power is not on the same level. And that is not a disrespect to him because Anthony Donko is rare. He is a rare player. So you lose a little bit of that unbreakable weapon, unguardable weapon, right? Where you just run around the right side, you counter, you pull 2 guys to that side. Anthony Donko washes away the right side of the line, and Nick Singleton gets 9 yards before he has to do anything, and then he does something else with it. None of that was present today, so they had to grind out this victory. And that's what happened in the third quarter. That's what they did in the fourth quarter. They didn't care about the final score or the final margin because they wanted to get some of those defensive players some reps, because we saw Vabu Torre on the field. We saw Alonzo Ford. We saw, I'm just going off the top of my head here, thinking about some of the players. Davian Collins was out there in the fourth quarter on that final drive, and that results in some of the things we see here. Brett, he says, let's not forget the last 2 seasons, Penn State had top 5 offense in games not against Ohio State and Michigan. There was a need to win big and have a pretty resume win when only 4 teams make the college football playoff. That is not necessary. That is not necessary right now. Brett, that is a great point. Style points mean less. I think they still mean something, though, because there will be a point where you got to make a decision between 2 like teams. And if Penn State sustains a loss, you need to have a resume that shows strong wins. Now, that's the problem. Our people on the college football playoff committee, are the selectors, going to go back and be like, well, this game wasn't as close as it indicated? Because it wasn't. This game was not as close as this indicated. The 3 points they scored, that's probably more accurate, especially when they failed on that 4th down attempt. What was it? 27-6, I think, might be the fairest in the land if we want to say they go for that second field goal. That is not a competitive game. This game wasn't necessarily competitive for after the first quarter. KJ Johnson says, hate to say it, but this feels like the same old 10-win Penn State team we've come to love on to USC. Yeah, but 10 wins gets you into the playoff. That's what just said. Brett just made that point. Yeah. And I know that like you are saying these things almost at the same, actually literally by the timestamp at the same time. But yeah, like Urban Meyer said it in the pregame. Are you seeing a different Penn State team? And he said, no, I'm not. They're a really good team. Ohio State paid a lot of money and they went out and got a lot of really good players. They recruit really well. They had Travion Henderson and decided they were going to go get Quinshaw Junkins in the transfer portal. Come on. Like there are things at play. There are forces at play that I think are if you're going to do the comparison game, it is part of that conversation. I want to get through a lot of these here because we have a lot of people. And I want to give the people who donate to the channel their respect, but I also want to get to some of the thoughts and questions here in the live chat aside from those. So Brett says, James Franklin seems more confident in this group than in the last few years. Wouldn't surprise me if teams had coasted as another gear next week. I don't necessarily believe that. My point is, and I think, Brett, you brought up the real answer, they don't need style points the same way. James Franklin was, I think, very, very aware of the point differential in a 4-team playoff. They haven't seemed as concerned about that. The decisions they've made of when to play young players, how they're playing them, the explosive passing play to the running back. I apologize. What was his name? Harden, number 25. You have Tamir Robinson on the field at that point. Tamir is a redshirt freshman who would not play in that situation, most likely, if you were worried about the margin of victory when he's playing in the first half of the game. So I think they're doing this to plow reps into their young players, build up some of that depth they need, and they probably would have loved to score more in this game, but at the same time, you've got to play the cards you were dealt, and that is part of it. But to that point, he's more confident in this group that they're gonna win, so they don't need to keep the starters in as long. I do believe that. Do you think Eddie Kolnicki is hiding plays for later? Yes and no. The Tyler Warren Wildcat they've been working on since training camp, and they waited until last week to bust it out. They've done things. Mari Evans lined up in the backfield. That's something they did at the game in practice against Illinois. Again, we don't talk about these things until they come up on the literal screen you're watching or on the field. So they're always doing things. Not everything makes it into the playbook, though. Not everything is ready. So yes, but no, they're not going to come out with an entirely new game plan next week. Now, they probably have more than one third down call for a passing play. And I would like to see what the second one on 3rd and short is. But so far, 3rd and short has been mesh and Drew Allar runs, or run the football. That's their 3rd down plays. So we'll have to see what is more in store there. So yes, I do think there is a little bit of, we can use these games and these concepts to work on things and set things up for later. We don't have to use all of our bullets, but if they needed something that they needed in that game, they would have pulled it out. It's just, did it make it in the playbook, and did they need it in the game? And so far, they haven't needed every single tool in the shed to win a game so far. So they haven't, but they've also put it in the game plan. So it's just, I never like the hiding plays thing. I talked to Landon, I asked him on air, and he said, no, that's not really how that works. But the offense also evolves over time. So we'll see a little bit more of both of those things. Michael McCollum, the beard father, is here. He says, can we also say they took a step forward today? I don't, Wait, I don't want to answer this question. Maybe? No, I don't think so. So it's a little nuanced here. They did not have Nick Singleton. And I think that's a big deal on offense, because when we're talking about threats on the field, Katron Allen's a very good running back. But when you're talking about threats, like what we have to game plan for, Katron Allen isn't necessarily, I have to game plan for that. He's going to hurt you. He's going to get yards. He's going to be effective. But it is what it is. Like, he is not going to go for 78 yards if you have an oopsie in coverage or in your run fits, most likely. This particular game, they did not have their home run hitter, but Drew Allar was much better this week. So Drew took a step where he attacked when it was there, and he was very good. So if you tell me that they get this Drew for the rest of the year, the one who went 10 of 14 in the first half before he kind of just like checked out for the day in the game, I'm fine with that because they're going to get Nick back at some point. So they'll have a full deck of cards. And again, Anthony Donko is a weapon, and they lost that in the first half too. So no, I would not say overall they took a step. They did allow 3 points. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I know the final score says 11. The starting defense allowed 3 points. And then they gave up 9 in the final 20 seconds. I don't take garbage time points in the same weight as points in the first quarter or in the third quarter. And they were dominant in the middle of the game, which allowed them to do what they did today. Has the Bo package become too predictable with limited throws and him always keeping it? Yeah, and so that's where I've got to go back. PSU Proud, great question. I won't know the answer of did he make the right decision and what was the team doing to him, the opposing team doing to him to force him to keep the ball maybe? Because it is a read. It's not him just keeping the football. There is a read he has to make. And a lot of times what teams will do, because Bo Prabule is in the backfield, because you have two options. The 207-pound quarterback runs the ball, or the 220-pound running back professional runner runs the football. So on an option play, you have two options. And the defense can force you into the option with the way they play that particular technique. So if they just decide the end crashes at the running back, if he gives the ball, that's wrong. But if he keeps the ball and they play kind of a trap coverage or a trap play where then they blitz somebody over top, then you have to have the pass on top of that. You cannot take the pass out, or else it's just like put Quentin Martin back there. It's the same thing. And there is a little bit of that where it has become too predictable. They threw it once, but teams aren't respecting that because he hasn't thrown it really since then. David is back. And David, we might have to... he's not talking about execution, talking energy. They looked vanilla. They didn't have the killer instinct. They had a mundane body language. I can't read body. Like maybe I have some sort of like spectrum thing. I'm not reading body language on camera. Maybe you saw something if you were at the game, David, that I didn't. I don't see any body language issues. I thought they played hard. Abdul Carter played hard. Dennis Sutton played hard. Zane Durant played hard. They were a little less effective than I think I was expecting from a pass rush standpoint and maybe from a total domination. But I also thought this group was a little bit better on the interior. They also mixed some things up and they put new players in the game. So 66, the left tackle, both of their left tackles were either hurt or ineffective. So they moved their left guard to left tackle. That was the guy I thought that Zane Durant was just going to whip all day, and he was not on the interior. So they put in guys that I didn't have a good read. So they mixed up their interior, their center, and their guards were a little bit different. So again, I have to go back and watch those players and see how they performed. You do sometimes have to give credit to another Big Ten team, a Power 4 team, for being good. And this is one of those situations, until I know the final tally of what happened in between the trenches, then I want to defer to not accusing guys of not playing hard. Because I think that is to me, that's, unless it's obvious, unless it's the Bowling Green situation, I don't think that that's a fair thing to do to guys who are putting themselves in dangerous positions to play football. But yeah, it's entirely possible they did not come out with their eye on the prize the same way they would against UCLA, USC, or do I have to say Ohio State again? I feel like it's the girlfriend that you like reject, the girl that rejected you. So now you talk about how much you don't like that girl when you're just obsessed about him. Like the amount of times that Ohio State comes up on a postgame show that has nothing to do with them. Even during the game, like during the broadcast, Joe Klatt and Gus Johnson, the only thing they talk about when the game gets to the point where Penn State has put it in the bag is, yeah, but Michigan and Ohio State, because that's what you care about. It is a fair criticism. It's something that James Franklin is now openly talking about and admitting the reality is clear. But at the same time, like, it is creating this like oppressive environment. Whew. Also, it's super hot in here for being October 5th after all that gray, cool weather with a breeze. And now I have to close my window because my neighbor is mowing at the worst time possible. These lights are hot. Maybe that's what's oppressive. Michael McCollin says, I'm also here for the vibes. Appreciate you, Michael. Not worried about the starting D at all, says PSU proud. And Ryan says, I think Penn State is just what it is. I don't think there's a secret sauce we haven't seen. We will slow games down, make mistakes, and not make mistakes and defense. Yeah, this is the reality that I was trying to talk about in the offseason. Penn State ran way more plays with Mike Yurcich in 2023 than Andy Kotelnicki ran at Kansas in 2023 by like 100 plays. That's a significant amount. I think it was like 899 or something, like 898 for Kansas versus 1,000 plays for Penn State. That's a major difference. And part of that is because Andy Kotelnicki runs the football and there is no stoppage of the clock on first down. So you're going to play a lot of plays, soak up a lot of drives, and you're playing like the Steelers in the NFL. And so like you're getting the results of that, where in college you could play that way and you could still get enough plays in the game. And then, you kind of get to have your cake and eat it too. And that's not the reality anymore because we're done at 3:15. In previous years, the game would have just concluded at like 3:45. Somebody asked me earlier this week about like, do I like the new rules that don't stop the clock? Yeah, because 4.5 hour football games, I love football. I watch football on Sunday. I watch film on Sunday. I watch film on Monday. I watch film on Tuesday. But a 4.5 hour game, I mean, like we do have other things in our lives, I hope. I don't have many more, but I like the shorter games is what I'm trying to say. Virginia Slim, T. Frank, feels like they could barely throw the ball on us when they were in man. Zone makes us give up those 10 to 15-yard open passes. Yes, but you cannot run man all the time. Virginia Slim, that's a very, very good point. You just can't be predictable. You've got to switch things up and give credit to the quarterback who came into that game and they had him throwing those short passes. Martin was pretty good in this game to be able to complete 22 of 30%, 73% of his passes. Now, again, they're 22 passes for 167 yards is 7.5 yards a pass. That's not going to win you a football game against Penn State. 7.6. Let's just, I'm going to round up to 8 to be generous. There was 8 yards a pass versus 14 for Penn State. So there are certain things that they do from a zone perspective, throwing the ball. There was more blitzing that I saw. They sent Jalen Reed after the quarterback more. Thought that was interesting. But that creates holes in zones. If you're blitzing and playing zone behind it, you likely only have 3 defenders at each level of the defense, creating wide open areas of the field, unless you've got predictive players that are matching in zone coverages. And Penn State's playing a little more of a drop system this year. So I don't think that they're doing that necessarily to smother and suffocate even in a zone situation. Alex says, when Drew holds the ball, I get nervous, not because I think he won't make a play, but because I don't know if anyone is getting open. Alex, that's a great point. That's a really good point. I thought that Penn State did some good things in this game because when you have off coverage and they were playing a lot of soft zones and they were not giving up those explosive deep plays, you've got to read through, and sometimes that takes time. And sometimes Penn State has not gotten open against those concepts. And I want to give Andy Kotelnicki credit here in this particular situation because what I saw in the first month of the season, he was calling plays that were predicted in terms of the defense took it away from scheme perspective. The routes ran into areas with defenders instead of causing stress on some of those zones. And then this game, what they did is, if you're going to play 8 yards off the ball, if you're going to give us all of that room, they started running in breaking routes on those soft zone or off man coverages. And so what that does is it does 2 things. When you don't run a comeback route, you're giving the opportunity for your receiver, whether it's Tyler Warren or Trey Wallace, to catch the ball with an opportunity to break one way or the other instead of having to catch and then turn or just get tackled with somebody plastering you in the back. When you run a dynamic route that still has motion to it, what you get is the first time Trey Wallace runs that in-breaking route, he catches the ball, you get 8 free yards. The second time you run it, and maybe it was a slant, maybe it was a dig. I don't really know if it was the exact same route, but it was the same action against the same off coverage. And suddenly you run a similar route where then you break back outside, you break a tackle, and you get extra yardage because you threw a route that didn't stop itself. And I think that even if it's just a little bit of momentum where he can then turn backwards and run back out to the sideline, that's a difference than what they did last year, which is when you have off coverage, we're just going to run 5 yards and turn. And so to me, that's a big deal. It's a little thing, but it's a big deal. And they also did a couple of things to run coverage off and create those bubbles underneath against these soft zones where you've got quarters or you've got some sort of off-man coverage, which they're getting quite a bit this year. So I think that there was some adjustment from the passing game. But the moral of the story here, Alex, to your point about Drew having to hold on to the football, teams are making Penn State throw underneath. They're making them run the football from a schematic standpoint, taking what's there, but not taking what's there in a way that's predictable. And so that is why I think this offense is sustainable, as opposed to last year when it felt like the walls were closing in the longer you went through the season and there was not really any adjusting and everyone just like getting closer and closer to the catch point. I don't think that's going to happen. So there's a lot of potential for this team to continue to grow and get better in these situations and break through when teams are doing something and taking something away from you. You can't always just acquiesce to the defense. Sometimes you do have to still attack. And that's what Drew did on that post to Amari Evans. I don't know if it was the best decision in the world, but I respect the fact that he had his guy in the slot, big post to Amari Evans once a game. That's your bingo card for going forward is Amari Evans in the slot equals a giant post that he's going to throw. And it's going to be something that Drew Allar targets every single game this year. P. Chris says, and I don't know what you're referring to. He says, or Drew can Zamboni. I just wanted to bring this up because do you think that Andy Kotelnicki regrets telling Gus Johnson that story? Because he's a hockey player. He drives a Zamboni, right? Great story. Now we're going to have a graphic, and the big Zamboni is going to be on screen all season long. But he kept referring to him as just like a hockey player. Andy Kotelnicki played football, guys. Like, he played football. He was an offensive lineman. He played football. So I just wonder in those situations, like, do you regret telling him that story? And speaking of things from the game today, from the broadcast, talking about Abdul Carter with a squat rack in his weight room or in his living room, I can confirm that is a reality because he did an interview with me here on this YouTube channel. If you're watching here, if you're listening on the podcast, you're not laughing along with me. You got to check out 43 minutes into the show. You'll see Abdul Carter sitting in his living room, leaning over the barbell in his living room, doing the interview with T-Frank. I'll tell you this story too. There was I want to make sure that this is not something that is like this is not like an off the record sort of thing, but his dad gave him a pregame talk, like a pep talk before the show. Like, I don't know if he could hear me or not. And he's like, you're going to dominate this interview. You're going to destroy this. That's how he attacks everything. The interview was something to win, is something to defeat. And you're seeing the results of that sort of like behavior 4 years later, 3.5 years later, where he is now one of the best players on the defense. And again, I think they said he didn't have a very impactful game. I thought he was very good, and he's playing the position of defensive end at a higher level than I expected. And I know I've said that every single postgame show, but there was another instance of he had a rush going upfield that he converted to go attack a running back and get a tackle for a loss. Most guys who are learning the defensive end position just keep going to the quarterback. That's what they're taught. Go get ball. Not much thinking, more attacking. Bam. This dude's doing things at a different level. And so I think like that transition, he's rewarded them with the way he's played. Didn't get a sack in this game, but he did get a tackle and a half for a loss. He also is directly resulting in other players getting sacks. Again, they blitzed Jalen Reed today on a delayed blitz from a little bit off the ball. Talk about Tom Allen and Manny Diaz and two of the differences in the two coaches. The off ball versus the mugged, everyone's on the line of scrimmage looks. When you get an off ball blitz, it's about timing and anticipation and acceleration from the second level defender. And you've got to have guys up front that are presenting a real threat, not just like I'm going to absorb a blocker, but are forcing a major action by the offensive lineman. So the guard had to step down hard to take away denying Dennis Sutton on his inside rush, opening up the B gap like the Red Sea. Thankfully in Jalen Reed's case, for him, the running back also made a mistake and went out to chip and did not see the blitz coming from the B gap from Jalen Reed. Another reason why you disguise these blitzes is because the running back then didn't step up and you get a free run at the quarterback. So Abdul Carter's playing awesome. Denied Dennis Sutton, I thought, had a good game. Got to go back and see exactly how they played specifically, right? But he hit the quarterback twice, and every single time he hits a quarterback, I am nervous for that quarterback. He hit that quarterback's arm twice today. Martin, hopefully his shoulder joint held up and he didn't just keep playing, because if there's a 270-pound dude who is as intense as Deny hitting your arm, I mean, we saw it. He's already ended one season this year. Lambda says, Zane Durant looked good. Ford played smart. I'll be honest. When I'm getting ready for the show, I don't necessarily see the fourth quarter as clearly as I need to, which is a problem because that's what's in your mind here. And I'm like, hey, remember the first quarter and the second quarter? And you're like, that didn't look good at the end. And yeah, so Lambda says Ford played smart. I thought Zane Durant played very good in this game. That is pending, and I want to have the same standard for him and maybe like a Drew Allar, where I expect them to be great every single game. And he was good. So maybe he was a little bit like on the, it's hard to say disappointing, but I underperformed my expectations. But again, there's probably things that he did that I did not see in the second half where he was very good, because he tends to do that. And so like there are plays in the second half that he was a step behind somebody else in making, and you should still get credit for those plays. So the defense I thought was pretty good overall in terms of the way they played throughout the game, except for that first drive when, again, you're talking about the way that teams attack the predictability of Penn State in their opening drive. David says we got a break on Allar's INT that was negated by defensive holding. Here's the thing, David. To me, this is a chicken or an egg situation, because Drew is throwing that ball anticipating Amari Evans being in a place that he typically is. He threw to a single high safety, but we've seen Amari outrun that guy before. So at worst, I want to say that should have been a jump ball in the end zone. Maybe not the best decision. I will agree that maybe that was the one play where Drew threw the ball and believed in his guy more than maybe the coverage dictated. And again, I've got to go back and look at the coverage. I don't specifically remember that play in great detail, partly because like the coverage is barely ever on camera, and that makes me sad. But the defensive holding penalty by nature makes it so that Amari Evans isn't at the catch point, which is why they throw the flag. So it looks worse than it probably was, even if it isn't the best of decisions. So I'm going to do that annoying thing where I'm diplomatic and play both sides and talk out of the lopsided side of my mouth and say that, oh yeah, it was not good, but it also wasn't as bad as it seems. And, nothing's, it's fine. It's just because I don't know all the details, but I do know when I watch that play, I'm like, there's no reason Drew would throw that ball. I've never seen Drew ever throw the ball willy-nilly down the football field. So I was not surprised when they called a defensive holding, because there should be a receiver somewhere in the frame. He's never thrown the ball to a receiver where there's nobody in the frame, unless somebody's made a massive mistake. And I shouldn't say that, because there were a couple of throws last year where, again, the receiver ran the wrong route and ran the wrong way. And suddenly it looks like Drew Allar is throwing the ball to nobody. But again, going back to Drew Allar on this particular game, 71% completion percentage, a touchdown, 237 yards. I think he's playing well. This game was another one of those where if he had gotten another, opportunity in the fourth quarter where what was their run pass ratio late in the game? Because you don't get to 300 yards if you don't have the opportunities to throw the football. So through the third quarter, let's see, in the third quarter, he had 46 passing yards. He was 5 of 5. So they were throwing underneath. He was efficient in the third quarter, got them in position to get points. In the fourth quarter, Penn State was 2 of 5 passing for 62 yards. So essentially, is that where in the fourth quarter, is that where they got the big play? So essentially, all of those yards were the only play. They went 3 and out to start the fourth quarter. They had the ball one more time, and then the game was over. So again, Allar's not getting the opportunity to put up 300 yards. And I guess this is leading me into the conversation of this offense is not conducive for a quarterback to win a Heisman unless he hits 100% of his passes. He's just not going to get enough of those plays to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like it is in the game plan. You can make that happen. But with the way they run the football and Andy Kotelnicki's dedication and creativity to get as many players as involved in the run game as possible, because once again, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players run the football. Not 2, not 3. And I know that Katron Allen had 21 carries, but they get everyone involved in the offense. I also want to talk about this when it comes to the offensive output from the receiver position. I don't mind the multi-target games and the distribution of the targets. So, Liam Clifford, 3 catches, 107 yards to lead all receivers in this game, because that's what they gave Penn State. Now, if you say we move Trey Wallace into the slot and he runs that route and he gets open and he's the one that catches that pass, okay, fine. I think you could do more maybe to design and scheme for Trey Wallace. And I think they get him the ball as much as they can. I mean, he 3 catches for 46 yards. Again, a healthy clip for him. But they distribute the ball, and who is open is who gets the football. You want all of these guys, when they're called upon, to be the number one receiver. And I think for the most part, they've done that. Amari Evans had a drop. He didn't get through that contact deep in the route to present a target to Allar on that deep play. And I think those were his only other 2 targets. So they're doing mostly a good job, but who's open and who's designed and who the defense gives you is where Allar's going with the football. And that's what, like, he's the point guard. So he's not going to just force feed one player over and over and over again, unless it's Tyler Warren. And that's who they're force feeding the football to. A couple other programming notes for you here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, BWI Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Thank you for joining me here. We've got a great crowd. As always, the internet is not anyone's. It is only belongs to
the almighty algorithm.
If you want me to keep doing this show, do what you are doing. Watch the show. I'm so happy we have a great crowd here after a game that was okay, right? UCLA doesn't bring a lot of interest outside of the fact it's the only game in October for Penn State as a home game. Please like the video and subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Help us grow this so we can do more and we can bring you more stuff. And honestly, just because you want to win, Penn State football fans, I need to tell you something. I'm part of the On3 network. Blue White Illustrated is part of the On3 network. We're like 10th, maybe 12th in the network in terms of total subscribers to our YouTube channel. Now, I'll take, whatever it is, it's on me. I'm the head coach here. So, like, the fact that we're not number one ultimately falls on me. But if you want to prove that you're as good as Notre Dame and Michigan, like the channel, subscribe to the channel so that everyone knows Penn State fans, they're all in on this season. And so you can get your heart broken later if that's how you want to view the season, because there's always that pessimistic side on the internet on the other side. But I will be here, as I always do. I will give the specificity to your rage, or I will give the specificity to your happiness. What happened? Why did it happen? How you should think about the thing that made you feel the thing. Like David is going to feel how David's going to feel. He did not like this game, but hopefully what I was able to help him do is give him a little bit of, it wasn't that bad, David. But also, if you want to know what was wrong, those are the reasons why. And of course, always subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We have the dollar deal right now whenever there's a big game, we usually have a deal that goes out that week. I don't know if there's going to be one right now, but there might be. USC, big game, is going to be on the road. First time playing in LA. This is the week, right? This is the week everyone wants to know about. Alex says, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on Wednesday. The in-game thread is really fun. It's really something. It's really something for sure. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of emotion going on in the in-game thread. So let me check my notes, because there was a lot of things that I was impressed with in this game, and I wanted to get through them. Okay, actually, I know we only have about 5 minutes left on the show. Technically, we have an infinite amount of time, but I try to keep it to 60 minutes. Venga Ioane was awesome. I'm worried for the player that he hit. Luckily, I think that guy was okay, but that was awesome. We should all just acknowledge that was awesome. Nolan Rucci played for Anthony Donko after Anthony Donko got injured in the game. Something happened to his shoulder. Again, that's going to be something big, but Nolan Rucci came in and played pretty okay. I'm concerned about him in pass protection, and I'll give you the specific reason why. If you can't see what you're aiming for, you will likely miss it. And not every time, frequently, when he goes to engage in pass protection, he ducks his head. A lot of time, he's got 36-inch arms. I don't understand why he didn't but he ducks his head at contact, and then guys are able to manipulate him, get around him, a second move, and he's not on balance and in position. So if that continues, that's going to be an issue. That's something that I'm highly looking for. Like, that is absolutely something this week that we're going to discuss. James Franklin will not talk about it. He will be asked about it. And I don't know what to tell you about all of those things, but it is going to affect the game against USC if Anthony Donko is not out there. Nolan Rucci is not a bad football player, but he is still developing. Like, the size and the strength behind his frame has to continue to get there. He played from the second quarter on, and there were some times in the in the game where he gave up some pressures. I also want to talk about that pressure that Donko gave up that led to the sack. Quentin Martin is supposed to chip on that play. If you don't know what chipping play is, do you remember the play last week where Nick Singleton killed a guy and then ran over somebody else? That's a chip. He didn't do a good job on that play, so Anthony Donko was out of position, and then something happened to his shoulder, so he gave up a pressure to the outside. If Quentin Martin gives a better block there, I don't think that play plays out the same way, because Donko has been very good in pass protection. The good news is Martin came back later and blew a dude up on the other side when he had his second chance to chip an edge rusher coming at the quarterback. So he was impressive. His power through contact, it didn't generate the same explosive yardage and broken tackles, but he broke a tackle, or I think 2 or 3 on a play where it was a -1 yard play and it went for 4. So he got 5 yards straight through contact, which is very impressive. His receiving was good. I thought his overall play was good. He obviously is not 215 pounds, so he's not his final form, but he's playing with instinct and size and, honestly, way better skills than he did in high school. He was not like a very well-formed running back. When you play 2 positions on offense and sometimes 3 positions on defense, you are not mastering anything. And so it's good that he got a basis in the receiver position and the running position, but he is becoming a much more professional looking running back. So I'm very impressed with his floor so far that we saw in this game. That big play to Liam Clifford, I was super impressed with Drew Allar on that, because that was one of those, I don't know if it was cover 0, but I do know that they were playing that picket fence. It might've been quarters, might've been cover 0. I don't know if there was a zone pressure, but his ability to put the ball on a dot to Liam Clifford in stride under pressure, that was excellent. So as much as we talked about Drew throwing the ball up and leaving it short, the whole point is to get it perfect. And the more times we see him hit those, the more of those that are he's given the opportunity to do. I think there's more in store for that. I'd love to see more aggressiveness from the offense, but they are riding that line of wanting consistency, wanting to keep the team on the field and not go 3 and out. So there is a trade-off. Somebody did say that in the chat, and I'm sorry that I saw that. There was somebody who said, like, there is a trade-off. It was very early on. I wanted to get back to it. I didn't get a chance to. But no, if you're still watching, whoever you were, that was an excellent point. That there is a trade-off there that we've seen through the last 3 games or so, that they are staying on the field and choosing that over the explosive plays du jour, like a ton of those. I think that's all of my notes, which is perfect because it is now 60 minutes. But that's not it for the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We've got James Franklin's press conference coming up shortly, our instant analysis from our guys at the stadium. They're going to give you their thoughts on the game. Again, check out all those videos. We'll probably have another player, Drew Allar, when he speaks. We usually get a couple minutes of him. So get all that information in the post game. It is 4 o'clock on a Saturday. It's beautiful outside. Do what I would do. Take your laptop on the deck, sit outside, and keep going with Penn State football and with Blue White Illustrated. I love you all. Thank you for being here. This was an awesome show. A lot of great participation. If I didn't get to your question or your comment today, come back on Tuesday or join the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. You can talk to me at bluewhiteillustrated.com on the message board, and we can have a conversation there. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We will be back on Monday with James Franklin's press conference and Tuesday with the live show. We'll talk to you then.